Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Healing Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Chandler, and today we are sharing another Healing Heroine episode, a format where I sit down with one of our healing heroes alongside a woman that they've supported through her own healing journey. Today's conversation is about intuition, fear, and what happens when you choose to listen to the quiet inner knowing, even when it would be easier not to. It's a story about learning to trust your gifts, rewriting old narratives, and following a path that doesn't always make logical sense, but feels undeniably true. You'll hear from Olive, a mother, healer, and depth hypnosis practitioner whose journey includes divorce, chronic illness, profound fear around her own intuitive abilities, and ultimately a brave decision to follow what lit her up inside, even when it terrified her. For those who are curious, because I was and had to ask, depth hypnosis is a gentle way of working with the subconscious to heal the root of what's really going on, not just the surface symptoms. It's like hypnotherapy, but a more focused state that is very relaxed and organic. Olive's connection with our healing hero, psychic medium Lea Morgan, spans years. From early viewing of a reading that a friend had with her to intuitive readings that offered not just insight, but permission to trust herself, permission to step into her gifts, and permission to believe she wouldn't have to walk this path alone. Before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit more about our guest Olive today. Olive Evans is a depth hypnosis facilitator, writer, yogi, and mother devoted to helping women reconnect with their authentic selves through expanded states of consciousness and embodied awareness. Work that honors the system's natural pacing, allowing insight and transformation to emerge organically. She works one-on-one with clients and facilitates intimate gatherings where women can slow down, listen inwardly, and restore trust in their inner authority. Olive is based in Atlanta with her daughters and partner, an artist and gardener, on a garden-filled sanctuary where presence, simplicity, and beauty are practiced daily with varying degrees of success. And I am so grateful to welcome our healing hero, Lea Morgan, back to the show. I've introduced her many times before, but for those new to the podcast, after careers in advertising and interior design, Lea felt called to fully understand and open up to her intuitive gifts. She now offers mediumship and intuitive guidance readings and shares her work openly to help normalize spiritual and psychic experiences, especially for those who may feel afraid or uncertain about what they're sensing. Lea, Olive, thank you so much to both of you for being here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you guys today.
Hi. Thank you, Chandler. Thank you, Lea. I'm so lit up by this. So exciting.
Well, thank you for being here, Olive. I loved our conversation because obviously, as was the genesis of this show, I am so intrigued and fascinated about new modalities and approaches to healing. So I loved hearing more about your work. And as always, I just find these conversations with our healing heroines who are brave enough and honest enough to come on the show and tell their stories just so fulfilling, meaningful, and energizing. And so I'm just grateful to you for your willingness to show up and be fully in your authentic self for our listeners today. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so excited and so excited to be here with Lea, who's had such an impact on my life and continues to. So very grateful. Thank you.
Well, that makes two of us, Olive. I feel the same way. We love Lea.
We love Lea.
Okay, well, before we get into kind of the crux of today's topic, I always love to start with some light warm-up questions. So, Lea, I'm going to start with you today. Yes. What's something meaningful or affirming that you've witnessed in a session recently?
I was speaking to a woman. She was the client. She was living, speaking to her deceased father during the reading. And it was an unexpected loss. It's been hard. And she had said something like, I'm really pretty sure he's sending me signs, but I'd love to know. Keep in mind, this was in January. And the image I got in my head immediately was a rabbit. Now, I live in Atlanta. There are not rabbits outside in January. And so I said, I just saw an image of a rabbit. And she said, oh, that's exactly what it was. Well, little did I know, she was in Greece and was driving down the road, and like the largest rabbit she had ever seen ran up in the middle of the road, stopped in the middle of the road, turned around and looked at the car, and then ran off. And so that's one, right?
That's cool. I love asking this question because you don't remember so much. So I think it's fascinating from my perspective to hear the stories that you do.
Yeah. Well, I just remember, I guess because I remember my internal dialogue, which is kind of testament to the fact that I have to have faith and not use my brain, because, her father had passed in cold weather. And then, this was literally like 3 months after. So it wasn't, none of this was rabbit time. So my brain, where I live, so my brain wants to tell me, well, that's the silliest thing you've ever gotten. How could it be a rabbit? But I just ignore myself and say it anyway.
How you do the great work, Lea. Thank you for that. Olive, what's one small moment lately that's made you feel deeply aligned or grounded?
Oh, this one is easy because I have 2 young daughters. And so I get all of these great moments of presence with them. So I'm thinking of my 5-year-old. We were at the playground this week, and there were these great flowers made of metal that you could kind of bang with a mallet. And she was going to town, and I just sat with her, and we started making all of this music. And I think we might have stayed for 20 minutes, which is remarkable for a 5-year-old, but we just played these instruments together. And for each other, we would play tunes for each other, and it just felt so connected. I felt so connected and so present with her, and just like, this is it. This is the moment. This is why we're here. I get to be with you. So yeah, cool. Really beautiful.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that moment with us. Thank you. Okay, well, great start, guys. Now we are going to jump into why we're really here. And I'm so excited to learn more about you, Olive, and your work. I always love to start by just giving you the airtime to tell listeners a little bit more about you. Olive, to the extent you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to start with your life before working closely with Lea. What happened or what was happening in your world, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and what ultimately led you to seek her guidance?
Oh my gosh, it was a wild time. I found myself about 1.5 years before I booked in that intuitive guidance reading with Lea, the lowest point I had ever been in my life. I had just gotten a divorce. I had 2 small girls. And I had no career to speak of. I had been a stay-at-home mom. And I had a lot going on in my body and my mind. I was medicated for depression and anxiety and insomnia. I was grinding my teeth at night. I had PCOS and endometriosis. It felt like rock bottom, and it was so intense. And I just found myself in this place of like, I cannot believe I'm here. This is not how I designed my life. This is not what I thought was going to happen. And I didn't want to be here, to be honest. But I had my kids. So, of course, I wanted to do the work to figure out how to recover and get back on my feet and figure out my next iteration of my life. And so that was quite a journey. I spent a lot of time in meditation. I had a background in yoga and Buddhism. And so it was the one thing that I felt like I could hang on to and touch, and that was there for me. So I just spent a lot of time in deep meditative states, trying to make sense of things in the best way that I knew how. And throughout that time, I ended up doing something rather remarkable. I ended up healing myself of virtually everything that I was living with, and found myself able to live without antidepressant medication, anti-anxiety medication. I was sleeping through the night. I stopped grinding my teeth. And then to the shock of my doctors, I mean, I was scheduled for a hysterectomy. This was serious, PCOS and endometriosis. I healed myself of all of my cysts and we canceled surgery. So it was just this incredible moment where I realized I had done something remarkable and that I wanted to offer it to others. I was working as a yoga teacher at the time. I had a lot of private yoga clients, but there was something else going on here. So I decided to book a reading with Lea. I wanted an intuitive guidance reading to help me figure out what was going on and how I could sort of bridge the gap between what I had stumbled upon and how it might help other women.
Wow, that is incredible. I have so many questions for you, which I know we're going to get into, but were you doing anything else, or like, it's so incredible to me that the meditation did all of that for you. You really attribute most of the healing to that. Were there other things you were dabbling in at the time? I'm just curious.
Oh my gosh, I love this question. I don't want it to seem like I was magically meditating away everything. I think what was actually happening was the meditation did a tremendous amount, and I would always start there. But it also allowed me to have stronger and stronger energetic ability to start to make different choices in my life. So things like a daily yoga practice, changing my diet, making sure I was super hydrated, being and living really cleanly, spending a lot of time outdoors. That all happened as a consequence of this deep meditative practice. Looking into herbs, drinking a ton of nettle tea, really just like anything. I just wanted to bring in anything that I could to change where I was. So it was a combination of things, but the meditation was the foundation. I couldn't have done it if I didn't have that power that meditation really kind of helped infuse me with in those moments.
That's so well articulated. Thank you for sharing that. That makes perfect sense to me. It really served as a catalyst for you. And I think it's so cool to hear you speak about that, because it just is sort of a red thread for me as I think to all of the Healing Heroine episodes we've done, where like, this is why we talk about all the approaches on the show, because it's going to be different for everyone. But when you find that one thing that's authentic to you and it instigates all of these different decisions that you start to make because it wakes you up to something in whatever way that looks like, whether it's yoga or accountability or your meditation or breath work or whatever. It's such a powerful catalyst for growth and healing when you find that thing. And I think it's such a realistic way of looking at these approaches, right? Like nothing is a magic pill. All of these approaches support healing and growth in different ways. But I love how you were able to articulate that it sparked something in you that woke you up to your own power so that you could start taking charge of your circumstances. I think that's so beautiful and cool. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. I think Lea has said before, or I've heard her say before, it just takes little moments of light along the path. And then pretty soon you get enough moments of light that they accumulate that you can actually have a big rapid change.
So, Olive, you mentioned that you sought Lea's guidance in the form of just an intuitive session. And I know you first encountered Lea years ago through a reading she did for a friend. What was it about her and her work that struck you so deeply?
Well, as we all know, Lea is incredibly gifted. And in watching her read for my friend, I was struck not only by how incredibly, like, her abilities are so incredible, but also it was the skill and the way that she worked with them. All lights went off for me because I realized that here was a woman that was working with her abilities in such a boundaried, contained, clear way that clearly she had figured this out along the path. And I wanted to know how she did it. So it wasn't just that she was an amazing psychic, because she is, but it was that she was working with so much integrity. I had not seen this before. You know, we all grew up analog, right? So I kind of grew up with my own experiences and my own abilities, and I had no context for them. And so up until these points and this reading with Lea that I was watching, I hadn't seen someone work in this way, where they had their gift and they were using it to really help someone with skill. It blew my mind. I had to talk to her immediately.
So at that point, did you sense that you might have intuitive abilities, or were you just on your healing journey? Your friend got this reading and you were wowed by Lea and couldn't put your finger on it, but you just wanted to be with her, learn from her. Like, what was that experience like?
I knew that I had a unique inner world and experience growing up. So when I was young, I had what are known as out-of-body experiences. So I would astral project, and I would leave, my consciousness would leave my body, and I would travel around. I would do things like check on all of my family sleeping, leave and take off somewhere and go travel and check out some other area, come back. And I knew that these were real for myself. When you're a kid, your whole experience, your whole world is real, right? Like, you just assume everyone else is living like this, but you may not always have the words or the context. I knew these were real and actual for reasons like I would look at what my mom was wearing in the bed, and then I would wake up the next day. I didn't see her go to bed in her pajamas, but we would wake up the next day, have cereal, and she was wearing what I saw her wearing in the bed, right? So there was no doubt for me that it was actual and happening. There just wasn't a way to talk about it. And so as I grew up and I continued to have experiences like this, I would have knowings, I would see things, I would feel things. I began to understand that this was not the way that everyone lived, that this was not everyone's experience. I would be having coffee with a friend, in my teenage years, and I would see light, all around her. And I couldn't just say, hey, there's this going on with you. I just did. There was a lot, there's a lot of pressure at that time, especially as a teenager, to fit in. So I just started to find myself somewhat isolated in the difference between my inner experience and what I could share outwardly.
I think that's really important context for the conversation we're going to have with Lea, because it sounds like if that had been your lived experience and then you watched Lea give your friend this reading, what was it that you were initially looking for from Lea? Because I get the sense you didn't get a reading with Lea until much later. It was actually something else that struck you about her at first.
By the time that I saw my friend get the reading with Lea, I had done a very successful job of tamping down this perception of the world and my abilities without a context, without a way to work with them. And for some other reasons we can talk about in a moment, I just did not feel comfortable with that experience. And seeing Lea fully, this is the great thing about Lea, she needs no permission. She will just say what's going on for her and it will land, and it always works out. It's amazing. So seeing that in her full confidence and trust in herself and her skill, I wanted to talk to her because I wanted to know how she did it. Like, how did you get here? Can you point me to any resources? And I hadn't been working with myself in this way at this point. I just wanted to know everything. I wanted to know everything about her. She'd pointed me to two women that she'd worked with, Janet Raftis and Ina Lucas. And that started me on this rabbit trail where I just started following all of these pings, where I ended up in a place called the Monroe Institute, which is in Virginia, studying expanded consciousness, expanded states of awareness, and specifically how to have out-of-body experiences with skill and boundaries, ones that I could facilitate and direct and return from. So it was this great reawakening of this part of myself that I had successfully, up until this point, maybe denied.
She emailed me. I mean, occasionally I'll get an email from someone asking for a referral, and I don't remember the exact content of the email, but I remember that it was such that I felt like, I don't even know if I was doing mentorships at the time. I felt like it needed somebody a little more experienced than I was in more modalities than mine. And I had studied under Janet Raftis when I started this work, and she has more experience in more avenues of, I guess, psi ability. And so that's why I sent her there. But it was really in my world. I mean, this is so interesting. In Olive's world, obviously, this was a very important moment. In my world, it was me just answering an email from a client, right? I didn't know until later.
That's always how it happens. Yeah. You don't necessarily know the impact you're making or having on someone until much later. But clearly, this was life-changing, that email that you responded to, Lea. That's very cool. Olive, you later booked intuitive readings with Lea during a major life transition. I think, if I recall correctly, it was around the time of your divorce. You were a mother feeling unsure how to put all these pieces together, given your interests and everything that you had just gone through. What were you hoping to find or feel, and how did Lea help you during that first session?
Oh my gosh, this reading changed everything for me. It was incredible. I found myself healed of all of these incredible things that I had been living with, working with women one-on-one, practicing yoga. One of my clients was a client of Lee's, and she had mentioned Lee's name. And I, followed the ping. I have this little ping that goes off, and I'm like, okay, I need to book with Lea. I feel like I have something more to offer. I love yoga. I've done yoga with my mom since I was a kid. But there's something going on underneath, and I had just done something pretty remarkable that I wanted to offer more of to women.
I want to point out one thing, because I always want women to look for this. Keep in mind, on the timeline, Olive had already seen me do a reading for her friend, and she had already emailed me. And in a completely separate instance, a woman who had no idea about that mentioned me. Do you see what I'm saying? So I want us all to pay attention to the...
Or this is what we mean when we say your life is always speaking to you. Spirit is always showing you the way if you're open to it and pay attention, like Olive was.
Yeah. So sorry, Olive, but I want to point that out.
What unfolded.
I think, no, that's a great thing to point out, because you'll start to see how supported I was on this path. So I booked in an intuitive guidance reading with Lea. I didn't have anyone that had passed away recently that I knew of that I wanted to talk to. I just already had so much respect for her and her skill set and her integrity that I just wanted to know what was going to come through. And what I was looking for when I booked the reading was information on my work. I didn't say that when we started talking. I just said, I'm here. I'm totally open. I just want to see what comes through. So I sit down for an intuitive guidance reading, and Lea tells me about the way she works. And then she says, there's a lot of female energy around you. There are two women here. One has very white hair, and the other seems like she's related to your family. I said, okay. She said, the one with white hair is clapping, and she's so excited. And she says, I'm so excited about your work. And I was like, okay, what's my work? Awesome. I'm excited too. I don't know what it is, but tell me more. So I had two women show up. So this one with the white hair, she starts asking me questions like, do you have a grandmother with white hair? And I said, no. Oh, I have this guide. That has white hair. She said, that's it. She said, she seems like she maybe hasn't spent a lot of time on Earth. She seems like she's a sage. Like, I can barely follow what she's saying. She's not really moving her mouth. She's just sitting there and kind of going, as it is. And I was like, oh my, that is her, right? Like, oh my gosh. You have to know that at this point, how normalizing and affirming this was for me. I had spent all of this time in my inner world meeting with this woman, not knowing why, not knowing who she was. And here Lea is telling me, yeah, you're meeting with this woman. I see her too. She's right here. She's so excited to talk about your work. Immediately, I just felt so normal. I felt so normal and excited and was just on the edge of my seat about what she had to say. But first, my grandmother wanted to speak. And this was really important because I grew up in a household that had some mental illness. And it really affected me and my siblings. It had a huge negative impact on our lives growing up. And I had always been afraid as an adult woman that the mental illness that I had experienced from my family was what I was living with when I was having these experiences of out-of-body experiences and seeing things and my intuitive abilities. I was terrified that this was the same thing, that I was actually mentally ill, to the point where I went and I got screened by 3 different doctors to make sure that I wasn't, because it had had such an impact on my life. I mean, we had abuse and alcoholism and poverty, and it was just a really volatile upbringing. So naturally, I would be scared. I did not want to go down that path. So to have this grandmother show up, the first thing that she said is she wanted to acknowledge what I had been through and acknowledge the healing that I had done. And she said, I'm so proud of you for how far you've come. And it was such a gift to hear that. I did not expect her to show up. I didn't have a big relationship with her, but here I am, terrified, wanting to step into my work, wanting to step into my ability. And these 2 women, I mean, it was remarkable, right? To have that permission and that acknowledgement of, I think Lea said, she can speak on behalf of what you've lived through because she's related to them. She's just so proud of how far you've come.
It's so affirming to be seen in our pain.
That happens a lot. I just want to say, I'm so honored to even be present for it. And I'm crying about this experience. But I am in a lot of positions where the client I'm working with hasn't been able to be seen. And I get those messages. And that's almost like, I don't know if you noticed, Olive said, but first my grandmother wanted to speak, because spirit is so wise in the order in which they deliver messages. It's almost like, putting together a table. It has to happen in a certain order, right? So in order to be effective in this reading, the first thing Olive needed from spirit was to be seen and recognized and honored. But I didn't know that. I mean, how would I know that? I didn't know anything about her. And yet they never fail. They never fail to get it like that.
Yeah, it was really powerful to receive that message specifically from that side of the family that had the mental illness.
Thank you for sharing that, Olive. It's really special.
Thank you. I know it's not unique, but it was a big moment for me. So then they also wanted to acknowledge, and this was also so incredibly healing and beautiful, that, and I just listened back I have all of this on video. It's pretty great. If you ever get a reading with Lea, record it. There are words that are going to come through that aren't going to make sense until much later, as you'll see.
1,000, cosign, 1,000%.
So then they said, we want to acknowledge your divorce. And we want to acknowledge that it was a healthy decision, which I felt and I just loved hearing, right? Because I was still sort of lost and not sure about what to do next. And then my guide wants to speak, and it was quite intense. And I remember Lea saying, I almost can't understand her because Lea will, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but what I've heard from Lea is she'll describe how she tunes into a particular radio frequency. And that is the radio frequency of maybe the deceased, right? As a psychic medium. So this guide lived maybe a notch or 2 above that frequency. And so it was a bit of an effort to translate what she was saying. And you could see Lea kind of change her posture as she was trying to match the energy of this guide, right? So the first thing she says is she wants to talk about my work. And I did too. So I was all for it. She said, it's time.
Dun, dun, dun.
Like a real life wise one, only she's not alive, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, she is super wise. And then she said, it's been signed off on, which to me meant we had some kind of a soul contract before birth. And she assured me, she said, I will never break this contract. She said, where you're from and where I am now, contracts are never broken.
It's like a conversation with a deceased female version of Gandalf.
It's quite an analogy, Lee. Always bringing the great metaphors and analogies on this show. That one may have just taken the cake.
I know. I always say I feel like she's this ancient. She feels ancient and not of the earth and very feminine. Like this feels like woman's power rising up, Earth's power rising up. Like she's really
the matriarchy.
Old. Yes. Ooh. So I said, okay, Lee, I don't know what my work is. Can you tell me more? And this is where it gets really interesting and why it's so important to record, because what they started to describe and the way that where I ended up are the same thing. But at the time, I had no way of knowing this. So she says, you have a magic that can really help people if you are willing. I'm willing. Like, what are we doing? Tell me more. She said, it's going to be something that's like a journey. She used the word journey several times. You're going to be journeying with women. And I remember looking at Lee so incredulously, like,
Happens to me all the time.
Thanks a lot. What is a journey?
I'm a tour guide. What are we talking about?
Like, not plant medicine journey. Like, I have no idea what they're talking about. Right. And I'm really like hoping for clarity in this session. You're going to be doing journeys where you're guiding your clients, and they're probably women, through a lot like what you experienced with astral projection. It's going to feel a little bit like past life regression, but it's going to have a lot of depth. Remember, she used the word depth quite a few times. So she's describing this to me, and it has no relevance to anything that I know in that moment. So I'm just kind of filing it away and saying, okay, I have no idea what this is, but I'm all in at this point. And so I'm going to take note, and I'm going to pay attention.
And keep in mind that I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Of course not. I mean, sounds so wild.
I have no idea.
Truly wild. She doesn't know. You don't
Nobody
know.
knows.
I'm like dying to hear this come full circle. So please, Olive.
And so, we talk about the logistics. Do I quit yoga? Do I keep going with yoga? How do I get there? And she had all kinds of really practical information for me too. But one of the things that I really wanted to know, I said, I'm really scared. How can I do this work? How can I be the best version of myself? Like, how can I bring this work through in the best way? And also, I'm scared. I'm really scared. And my guide said, we will never let you go into those waters alone. I will always be with you. And I had just read this quote just prior to getting on the call with Lee. And I believe it was Joseph Campbell. And it said, the psychotic drowns in the same waters in which the mystic swims with delight. And I realized that I was going to be going into a place in my work that I didn't have to be scared of. That I had a team. And that I was not going down the path of my family or anywhere near a mental illness. That this was a protected space to go into.
That's hitting so deeply for so many reasons right now, Olive. But the way you tell the unfolding of that experience for you is so beautiful. And I'm just so honored that you shared it with us. And I'm really grateful for you just being here and being so honest and open with it, because I think it's a completely different way of looking at a lot of not just your work, but this space, spirituality, what's really out there, right? What we can do beyond what we even can imagine ourselves stepping into. Like, that is some really powerful stuff. And I, like you, believe that none of that was chance occurrence, Right. That was you being guided in a very specific way. And I just thank you for sharing that. When we first chatted, I remember you said you shared a story about the moment that conversation did come full circle for you. Can you talk about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So somewhere along the next year, Lea and I started to become friends. And I remember the moment that Lea had to say, we can become friends, but if we are friends, I can't be your psychic anymore. And I was like, kind of bummed because I didn't want to lose my psychic. She's really
I was
good.
like,
and
so
she
good.
really helped me so far. I remember I went to my partner who, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I really want to be friends with Lea. It was inevitable. And let me tell you, it's a good idea to have a psychic as a friend. That's an handy.
I bet it does.
well, I was telling Olive actually, because things come through all the time when I don't know they're coming through in my regular life. They do, even if I'm not in a reading, but you don't really notice that unless you spend a lot of time with me. And I always laugh. And I kind of love this. I want to preface it with I love this, but everybody I grew up with, like all my old friends, they don't listen to me any more than they listen to anybody else, which kind of cracks me up because they're not thinking of me as my job. They're thinking of me as, oh, Lea, whatever. She thinks it's a bad idea. Who cares? Or she thinks this is a good idea. Whatever. But Olive is totally the opposite. Olive's like, what'd you just say?
Tell me again.
I know. I take Lea's word as like Bible.
Yeah,
Yes.
I get that.
So good. So then we're friends. And somehow Lea offered to do a past life regression with me. And I had forgotten the words past life regression in our reading. I hadn't revisited the recording.
We haven't talked about this yet,
comes
but I trained under Brian Weiss and his wife at the Omega Institute. So I am past life regression certified. I want to make that clear. I wasn't just going off, the deep end with some sort of
That is helpful, Lea. And actually, it's a good reminder we need to do an episode on that, just you and me, so people can learn about that modality as well.
Since we were friends, I said, I can do this for you. And I'll tell you why. You were feeling really stuck. This is what I remember everything about being friends. I remember nothing about the readings. But you were feeling a lot of lack with resources, future resources. Is that accurate?
Mm.
A lot of scarcity fear.
Yeah. Which I think as we're building businesses comes through. And this was my first experience being a mom of two on my own with a private practice and stepping into entrepreneurship. And there were a lot of factors there. Yeah. And so you offered to do this past life regression reading. And like everything you say, I was like, yes, let's do it. Absolutely. So Lea comes over and she sits down, and above my sofa, I have this big blown up photograph of a Luna moth on a light box that my partner made. It's so beautiful. And she looks at it and she says, Olive, the only time I've ever seen a Luna moth was getting onto the subway. Is this right?
Well, it was
Lea?
actually on my back door when I left for the airport.
To go train at the Omega Institute for this very thing, for past life regression. She said, I think that you should study this. I think that you're meant to be a hypnotherapist. So then she takes me through this past life regression, and it completely clicked for me. This was like going on one of my own journeys and my own deep meditations, but having a guide that can focus and direct the attention to gain information that could be useful, right? It was an amazing experience. And I ended up in a life where I was this really strong, amazing farmer in America looking out over my crops. And I just felt so abundant and capable and able. And I had this great wife and this house and these kids. And the whole thing was just like, I was so proud of myself. I had really built something amazing, right? Such a gift to receive in that moment as well. So I got to see the intelligence behind this process also. And I got out of that reading and I was like, this was unbelievable. Absolutely sign me up. I'm going to learn everything I can about hypnotherapy.
But people are always like, they don't hear about the journey to get to the destination. And I think it's so important. So of course, because she had heard me say Brian Weiss, she was like, oh, well, where's his website? Where is he? I said, Omega. There was nothing at Omega. I think we were out of season or something. And then no current activities on his website that he offers for himself. And so she couldn't just go where I had gone. She had to follow the breadcrumbs, right? So Brian Weiss was not showing up as available for you in any way. And then what'd you look up next?
I looked up a couple of different other hypnotherapy modalities. It's on the rise. It's pretty incredible. And there's a lot of people doing really good work. But I was doing this research and nothing was really hitting home for me. And I realized it was because I was looking at models where the hypnotherapist was really guiding the experience. And I realized later when I found depth hypnosis that what I was looking for was a more client-led experience. I had already been working with women, and it was really important to me that the women that I worked with led the process of their own healing and followed their own intuition. And I hadn't found that yet until I found Dr. Isa Gucciardi and depth hypnosis. And I went into the orientation meeting, and first of all, I am so in love with Dr. Isa Gucciardi. You want to look her up. And I joke all the time, like, she is like a little Yoda. She is this little Buddhist powerhouse of humility and humor and wisdom. I love her so much. I always say I want a little Isa in my pocket. But she started to describe depth hypnosis. And she described it as a journey that we guide, but that the client leads. And again, all lights went off. Big full body yes. Tell me everything. I want to know everything about this. And so I decided to start doing my own or receiving my own depth hypnosis sessions. And, by this time I had done a lot of healing. I had really done something remarkable in my healing, but I was stuck mentally, looping around and around about thoughts around my divorce, around my fears, around what am I going to do? How is this all going to work out? Thoughts and my relationship with my birth family. And I did not know how to unstick. Even with everything that I had done, I did not know how to unlock that root of all of those thought loops. And then I started doing these sessions with a depth hypnosis practitioner, Karen. She's amazing. And things started to change really quickly. It was so transformative and powerful and just effective that I knew that this was what I wanted to offer women. It checked all of the boxes, and it really allows the client, the woman, to be the leader in her own process.
And I love that your instructor also used the word journey, going back to your reading.
Depth. The word depth hypnosis that Lea had said a few times.
I mean, that's like the ultimate, I'm in the right place. Wow. Thank you, Olive, for sharing all of that. That's such a cool, and like Lea said, I don't think we get the play-by-play from like the reading to how the full circle unfolds. And I think it's so helpful to hear how it is a combination between like your conscious mind and your intuition. Like you'll get those downloads, but like you have to take action in looking up, where do I go find the answer to this? Like I keep feeling pulled toward this thing, but like, where can I go investigate more? Like that's not going to happen. It does take, your own free will to make the most of these, pieces of information that we're getting all day. So thank you for sharing that. Lea, I have to ask you, having heard all of this, and I know you kind of jumped in here and there, but like, what stood out to you the most about Olive's transformation and evolution in this space?
How fast it was. I mean, which I will say, she didn't feel like it was fast, I don't think. I mean, the words I heard from her were when, Wow. How, when. As an outside observer, we all experience time differently with different thoughts in my own life. It looked fast, which I love for her. And I think...
I know. Congratulations. That's a big one.
Now, I mean, I believe when you look at it, you realize maybe it was fast.
Yeah, I think having this episode and going back and listening to the recordings and seeing how much we've done since then really gave me that perspective. So this episode has been a gift in that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just fast. And, I don't become friends with all my clients. In fact, I don't know that it's ever happened before, which is another interesting layer to this story in that since then, in a million reasons we don't need to get into now, it's pretty evident to me that the universe was trying to get the two of us together for many other reasons other than just this story we're talking about today. So, it's just to me, it's just a great example of keep doing the next right thing that your intuition says to do. And as we always say, the universe is working for you. But you're absolutely right. It takes, I always say it's a beautiful combination of footwork and faith. And it's easy to just rely on faith or just rely on footwork. It's when they're in balance that the magic really happens.
Yeah, good reminder, Lea. Thanks for that. Lea, I'm just curious, how do you approach guiding someone who is deeply intuitive, but also unsure of or fearful of what that might mean?
It's a good question. So I encounter this kind of at two different levels in my work. So the first level would be an intuitive guidance reading. And in that sense, I don't have to do anything. I think that's important to remember. They're seeing me on the screen, but everything I'm getting to say or everyone that I'm getting to bring forward is orchestrated by individuals in spirit. So I need not worry about how that goes or what's said because it's created in a way that I could never create it perfectly. But when I do have mentees, which I do, it kind of reminds me of what Olive likes about her journey into depth hypnosis is that I just allow it to be really mentee led. I don't want anyone to go where they're not ready to go. A lot of it will happen organically just from seeing me be such a nut. People see me be, if I'm so willing to say things or so willing to try things or we're doing fun exercises together, seeing me be really carefree is more than probably half the message, right? And then the second half of the message is you're safe with me. We're never going to do anything or talk about anything or endeavor anything you don't want to do. I think a through line between Olive's work and my work is you are sovereign over yourself. And that is the number one thing. And the whole point of encouraging people to tap into spirit or intuition or whatever you want to call it is to make them more sovereign and more aware of how sovereign they are. So really, I hope that answers your question, but it is definitely not something I would ever do is encourage someone past their comfort. I'll sit with them where they're comfortable. Sometimes that's just the thing that moves the needle. The fact that they're actually encountering somebody in the world who's like, okay, right here is great. When you meet no resistance, then suddenly you get a little braver. Like, oh, well, we could talk about that if you want to.
Yeah, no, I do. What's a single truth about intuition or spiritual guidance that you do wish more people understood, especially those who might be experiencing something different and feeling afraid of it?
The first thing is I do not say something that I don't think is true. And so I promise that the universe is working for you. So any guide you have, any deceased loved one you have that wants to reach out with guidance is like your biggest cheerleader. And I know that's a faith-based operation, but I can attest to it, thousands of clients over. The second thing that I think is a more practical and interesting observation about humans, including myself, because I'm human, is, and this happened in Olive's reading, and luckily she just allowed herself to sit with it. But I don't think that humans realize how narrowly we define things based on our current lived life. So quite often the messaging we get, if it doesn't match our current lived life or it doesn't match our current area of knowledge, it can seem, I don't know, not important or not real, or we don't know what to do with it. I mean, it depends on the personality, right? Some people like Olive let it sit. I have some clients, and this is fair, that will just reject it. Like if it doesn't fit with their current setup of the world, they'll just reject it. And quite often to later find out it was true. And they're allowed to do what they want in the moment. I want them to be human. And then others who will just be confused. Like, how can that be true? How can that be true? You know, it can be as simple as like spirit saying, because you got to remember, spirit uses words in their grandest meaning. So spirit could say something to me to tell someone like, you're really meant to be a teacher. And the person will hear, you have to teach grade school, when that is not what the individual in spirit said. What they meant on the grandest scale is you are meant to possess knowledge and share knowledge. So a lot of times I'm kind of reframing, let's back up 30,000 feet. What does teaching mean really? What is the definition of it? And then how would that apply? Are you someone that loves knowledge? Do you love to share knowledge? How are you drawn to sharing knowledge? So sometimes I do, as a human, I do help navigate kind of the seeming obtuse nature of the guidance. But then a lot of times, like with Olive's reading, I told her everything I could get my grubby hands on as far as what they were giving me. And that did not mean I understood it any more than her. So sometimes, so all of that to say, let it sit. You don't have to sign off on it immediately, but let it sit and see if things happen later that make sense. You know, I had a couple of psychics 10 to 12 years before I started doing this work tell me that I was going to do this work. Have I mentioned that before?
Yes, you have.
And it made no sense to me. I mean, I would walk in and they'd be like, there's a line of dead people behind you waiting for you to start talking. And I'd be like, I work in advertising. I'm just here to find out, like, I don't know where to move or what job to get. And these psychics didn't know each other. You know,
Right.
They randomly years apart and random different ones. And I would just be like, okay, well, tell them I didn't stay in line. I don't know what they're doing, but all right. I mean,
oh my gosh, I can't imagine. What a reading. Plural readings.
I know.
One of the things I think that's so great, Lea, is when you describe how spirit is very aware of our risk tolerance.
That's
right?
a good call.
I remember when I came to depth hypnosis, there were two things that made me feel really good about taking that step. And it was that it was so research backed and data backed. That felt grounding and like, okay, I can do this. That I had a way to work with people that they didn't have to subscribe to what was happening for me in the background. That could only inform my ability to guide them through their journey, but it wasn't something I ever had to talk about or present. Now everybody's going to know because we're on the Healing Heroes and I'm talking about my story. But yeah,
love it.
Those two things, that was an awareness of my risk factor, this work allowing me to step in and do.
Yeah. Individuals in spirit, I don't know how to tell you. Every message I get is catered exactly to the person I'm delivering it to. Their belief system, their risk aversion or risk tolerance, their mood, their knowledge. It's unbelievable.
To close us out, Olive, for listeners who feel a quiet pull towards something that they don't fully understand yet, what would you say to them?
I want to give something really practical here. I want to say, to the best of your ability, make a little bit of time and space every single day to get quiet, to relax your body, and to tune into your heart. And I mean that literally, to breathe in and out from your heart space and just listen. That may be over a cup of coffee when you have one breath to take. But hopefully it could be maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, maybe more. The more space that you make for that still small voice, the more it's going to guide you and it's not going to lead you astray.
Beautifully said. Quick follow, because I have to ask, I'm a practical person and I'm going to try this. Do I have to be sitting up? Do I have to lie down? Is there a right or a wrong way? Can I hunch? I mean, tell me all the things.
So yeah, let's do it for a second. Just go ahead and find your seat under you. You could be standing. Just find your feet on the ground or the seat under you. And relax your shoulders. Soften your jaw. Relax your tongue on the floor of your mouth. Big empty space behind your eyes. And just become aware of your heart. And just take one conscious breath in through the heart and out through the heart. Soften the body. Relax the eyes. And just breathe this way. And that's all. It's very simple. It's not easy,
I mean,
but it gives you a
if I
moment
have your
to.
voice, it's much easier.
Right?
It's so soothing.
Isn't it obvious now
It was
she was
like-
meant to do that?
Yeah, Olive. I mean, I was like, okay, 10 minutes. I'm going to be out cold. This is so good. Because I think that's the hard part, right? Is like, how do I know I'm doing it right? Like, am I hearing my heart? Am I really relaxed or out of my mind? Like, I think it takes a lot longer sometimes to like, I think it changes by day, right? But sometimes it can be so hard to just like have the confidence that this is enough. What I'm doing is enough, right? In so many ways. But it sounds like you're
Absolutely.
just encouraging the attempt, try and keep doing it.
Just
And it
show
gets
up.
better and better.
Just show up for that moment. And if you do that every day and get quiet and just make a little bit of space, what's meant for you isn't going to pass you by. It's only going to get louder. You're just tuning in and listening, just giving yourself the gift of that moment. And it can be one breath if that's all you got for the day. But do it every day and you'll find that you're going to want to take a little bit more time there. It feels really good.
Thank you for that. That is I don't want to call it a New Year's resolution, but it is like my singular focused goal for the next several months is to do more of that sitting, quiet listening, because I've always done guided meditations. I have like a haptic sound mat now where I like meditate lying. Thank you, Sarah. Another one of Lee's clients convinced me to buy this thing and I'm obsessed with it, like obsessed.
Yeah.
But like, I think there's a lot of value in just sitting in silence and being with yourself. And I think I underestimated the power of that. And I think I've been afraid to do more of it because I do feel like I'm doing it wrong. But to your point, I'm just going to keep showing up and we'll see where it takes me because I really want to try.
I love it. I wish you the best on all of that.
Thank you. And separately, I'll be booking a session with you in the next several weeks to experience depth hypnotherapy. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. Absolutely.
Well, Lea, Olive, this was so much fun. Thank you for being here today. Olive, you in particular, I just want to acknowledge again your authenticity, your honesty, your ability to show up vulnerably and tell your story so that other listeners can feel less alone and understand that there are so many ways to find healing and hope on the other side of these incredibly difficult experiences that we go through as humans. So thank you for being here and having this conversation today. And as always, you as well, Lea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chandler.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need permission to trust themselves a little more. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to meet our heroes and submit your ideas for future guests and episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.